Welcome to another episode of the Aligned Life, the Goddess Life, where we dive into living life fully aligned, mind, body, and spirit, at peace and unbothered. We are here for another episode of our roundtable where Ashley and Layne sit down with me, and today we're going to dive into the ideas of complexity versus simplicity. We're going to dive into this idea of stuck versus still. There's a lot of different flowing energies that we're going to tap into and look at. And I'm really excited about this particular energy. Ashley and I were just talking about how the cards that we pulled for the day, one of them fits super well for trauma talk, and the other one kind of branches both trauma talk and what we're about to address today. But let's start with first of all, hey friends, how are you guys?
Hi.
Hello.
January's been a long month.
It has, and it's still not done yet.
I know.
Now that you mention it, it really has been, hasn't it?
Yeah,
I
it
feel like
feels
last
incredibly.
last January I blinked and it was gone. And here I am like looking at my calendar and I'm like, I still have a week.
Yep. Yep.
Right.
I keep thinking that next week is February, and it is absolutely not.
Well,
No.
I mean, to be fair, it does start on Saturday.
That
Like
is
next Saturday.
that is true.
Next Saturday, though.
Right. It's still a whole week away.
Not tomorrow, friends.
Oh, it's so much. So much. Do you want to put in for this episode also what your card was?
Sure. Well, hold on, reorient myself for a moment. Okay, so I pulled a card for the Akashic Tarot deck, and I got the Lookout. And it was this image of a guy standing on the crow's nest with binoculars in hand, looking forward while the ship he was on fire and there's a battle waging below. And it was talking about how, there may be some conflicts and challenges that are presented to you right now, but if you take the time to survey the area, the temporary loss of position can be recovered as long as you are, paying attention to where you're going and really bringing in that foresight.
I love that. I think that that's so helpful and especially for these topics. The card that I got was Isia, the threshold of Isis, like as in the goddess Isis. And the imagery on this card is so beautiful. It's a woman who is looking off to the side, and her hair at first glance kind of looks to be a little messy, but then when you look closer, it actually is woven. And she has a hummingbird sitting in this woven nest of hair. And there's all of these different, what are they called? Like the pistils and stamens of flowers, just kind of like flowing through her hair, like they're part of her hair. They're the same color. I'll try to take a picture of it and put it in the comments also, because it is just absolutely beautiful. And this card is all about understanding the difference between, I love the words you used earlier and what you pointed out, the stillness versus stuckness.
Mhm.
Because it's about instead of allowing yourself to feel stuck, you take yourself out of it and into your stillness and you're observing. In the book, one of my favorite parts of the description says if another is attempting to entangle you in drama, firmly and cleanly orient yourself in your rightful inner place of spiritual empowerment. Cultivate compassion whilst focusing on your own life, heart, and purpose. Do not allow words or actions cast from the delusions of hate, fear, or jealousy to undermine your commitment to your path. And that, I think, when we talk about spirituality, is like that is like the purpose of so much of the stillness that we are taking and learning how to objectively observe.
Absolutely. So, like, our topic comes from Gate 52 in I Ching. I think I'm saying that right. If I'm not, somebody tell me, please. Um,
I think
but
you're right, but yes, please, if we need to be corrected, please correct us.
but yeah, so the shadow within that is this energy of stress. And when you look at that shadow, it's these two different types of people, right? Those who cannot sit still and those who are stuck. So, the difference in that and kind of like tying into the card is this, there's this inner restlessness. Um, and we kind of talked about it in trauma talk where, you're giving those knee-jerk reactions and you're kind of in this panic state. So you're not able to use that foresight and actually like observe your surroundings, observe what's going on in your environment so that you can find the best path forward. And then when it comes to being stuck, you're caught up in that battle and still not looking around. So there's this power in that stillness and being able to pause and take in not only what's happening in the moment, but what's happening around you and what the future holds so that you can bring in that foresight and start to navigate it in a way that feels aligned and honest and um it's kind of opening, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. When I think you said it perfectly, when we get into that stuck pattern, we are super closed and we are in this defensive positioning where we don't have the ability to fully receive what another experience, another opportunity, another emotion can show up as. But when we sit in stillness, we are the receptors. Layne and I talk about this all the time in tarot talk and in divination. We're conduits. We're this energetic piece that fits into a puzzle. And when we're in stillness, it is when that piece of that puzzle is fully aligned and sitting right in its place. And we can feel all of the energy that is flowing through us and we're receptive. I say it a lot also when I work with shadow work clients, when we're talking about, and this has been such a huge topic over the last week, when we talk about communication, um, in order to remain still versus stuck, we have to be reflective, respective, and receptive. I call it the three R's of communication. That is my own coin term. Don't go looking for that other anywhere. You won't find it. Because those are like the three key components we need in order to sit and hold space that is safe not only for us, but for the other people that we're showing up for too.
I really love that.
Yeah,
Um,
well said.
so it's interesting because, one of the lines when I was looking into this gate more was talking about the seed of intention, right? Which goes perfectly along with that. If you begin something from a place of fear, the seed of fear will infect every aspect of the expansion of that activity. And become like a virus that eventually brings the structure to the ground. So I talk about foundations and your why a lot, right? And when we are very reactive, um, and we're either restless or we're stuck, right? It it comes from that place of fear and stress and that shadow energy. And to be able to find that stillness and just go into that energy of restraint where you're just kind of pausing and holding before you choose can be a very powerful turning point, both in your manifestations, whether it's spell work or prayer work or affirmations, or just your choices in general. Because, we attract what we put out. And that why, that intention is that seed that everything grows from. So when you're looking at what you're doing and why you're doing it, you'll start to see that energy is returned back to you. Um, and that moment of stillness, that moment of pause, allows that opportunity for you to kind of explore your choices and the why behind them.
I really,
So
really like that, the way that you said that. I'm sorry, continue.
I was gonna say that I've been listening, I've been getting this imagery, like a scenario playing out, and it's this feeling of like, stuck and stillness. Um, it's coming from a place of like uncomfortable, um, and there's an element of needing or wanting to flee. And I imagine this like feeling of like fleeing and like you're in the woods. And so you just take off. You're like, I need to remove myself from this situation. And you blindly just take off in any direction. And after a while, you've been fighting brush and you're in this forest and you've lost all sense of direction. And so the feeling I'm getting is like, so then you become still, and as you stand in the forest and you catch your breath and you start to observe, you finally notice the like direction of the sun. If you know anything, about like the side of the tree with, that lichen grows on, maybe you start to notice the terrain and game trails. And then you can, start to hear the animals around you and come back to center and use those tools like a game trail or the direction of the sun to reorient yourself. But it comes from pausing and being still and observing.
ooh, I
Yes.
love that so much. That is such a perfect metaphor for this vibe.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I think that also ties in the trauma talk episode so well. Also because we talked a lot about, people making knee-jerk reactions, and we learn best in stillness.
I
You
mean,
can't learn if you're
sometimes,
stuck in post.
pulling off of last week, like sometimes a knee-jerk reaction is, that's the impetus to be like, okay, I have to move. I need to move. Maybe it wasn't well thought out. Maybe, it was ill-timed or whatever, but there was an impetus there. There was a explosion of movement. Take it to the next step and sit with it and then observe, where did it come from? Why? How did it manifest? And now what?
I like that. I like that. And that gives it a much more cohesive picture. My brain is still not all there, friends.
It's all good. The word catalyst was coming to mind for me. Very much like the imagery that you described, that catalyst moment causes you to jerk and run for the forest. And then as soon as you're away from the threat, you're able to kind of pause and reorient
Mm-hmm.
versus going further in and getting yourself lost.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's a lot of power behind just having that restraint and holding in that desire to move. and just being still and kind of sitting with things and feeling where it resides within your body, um, and kind of allowing yourself to reorient back to self, back to your heart, back to your own unique path, instead of being pulled into the drama and conflict that's going on around you. I think Hallie's card mentioned that specifically.
Right. Is it like what's the movement for? What's the, like if you're feeling restless and called to move, like really allowing yourself the moment to collect and understand the why, and not just moving for the sake of moving, or doing for just to like release energy without that small moment of, well, where is this taking me? You know, um, I feel like people can tend to, just do things, poke someone else's buttons just because they need to release their energy, and not really have a clear, empathetic way of understanding why the heck am I feeling this way? Like where is this coming from?
Absolutely. And it goes back into your intention is the seed from which all things will bloom going forward. So finding that why um, is really, really powerful. So looking at the hexagram specifically from I Ching, it actually has imagery of mountains. Um, and it says, there is calm and repose in keeping still. Turn your thoughts inward to find peace. And I think that really captures this whole idea of, peace isn't passive. And I had this conversation with a client the other day. But peace is not passive. And we can easily get lulled into this idea of protecting our peace through withholding and not engaging. But peace is not passive. Peace is authentic and balanced, right? Where you're able to show up as yourself and express yourself and walk your path without needing to respond when other people are trying to pull you onto theirs.
I like that. I think that is a super powerful message in that. I also want to, I think, in reading more about my card from today, because this book has like 6 or 7 pages for each card. And there's a little bit in here that kind of touches a little bit of everything that we just said. And if you're all okay with it, I want to read it. Is that okay with you guys?
Yes,
Do
please.
it.
Um, it says the restorative magic of love is infinite, perennial, and will always be found by those who are willing to search for it. If you are being pulled into conflict, that which seeks to undermine unity with divisiveness, then take care. Conflict can become a means through which greater intimacy is eventually generated, but that can only occur if all parties involved value connection and harmony as a greater guiding purpose. If you make concessions with those who may want to take rather than co-create, you will likely be giving away your power rather than fostering mutual empowerment. Recognizing motivations that do not honor love in ourselves or others does not have to become an exercise in condemnation. It can simply be an expression of intuitive wisdom that leads to compassion and more sensible choices. There is a wisdom generating potency that arises when we are willing to see and accept things as they are now rather than as we may wish them to be in the future, which goes back also to exactly what Trauma Talk said. But then it says from that realistic and more loving viewpoint, we become capable of aligning ourselves with genuinely supportive forces, substituting enabling behaviors with more constructive and healthy responses, and protecting the precious reserves of life force that we have to fuel our authentic, heartfelt life path and mission.
I,
Wow.
I love that. It also, ties back into last week's provocation discussion and the whole idea that catalyst allowing you to break beyond the limits of the relationship and achieve an even deeper intimacy. I think that was one of the parts that really stood out to me.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I'm also still reading. There's a lot of this book. If I come across more, I'll read more.
Yeah, and it's also just a time to, to check in and make sure you're taking care of yourself. You know, when you're in a stuckness or restlessness, it lends itself to being more of this external, you know, where you're focused on the other and the other people around you and their needs. And so being still can give you that opportunity to remind yourself, well, where am I? Like, what do I need? Do I need to just stop and like just take a checklist of myself before I can re-engage and move, you know?
Absolutely. I think we need to like schedule those into our calendar, like days where we just regularly check in with ourselves and be like, who am I? Where am I going? What do I need? What needs to go?
Yeah, 100%. It was a rough week. And so personally, I just decided to, get back into my painting. It's been sitting there since before Christmas. And a lot of that is because of external factors such as, life, mom, holidays, school. And so just coming back to what am I doing? What am I creating? That has that potent feeling for me that I feel is part of what's moving me forward through life. And in that time, it's painting is an amazing practice for stillness. Um, and sitting with your thoughts and it was very helpful and then finally after just a couple days of that it was like okay I'm going to leave the house and it felt wonderful to leave and connect with just people out in the community as you do when you're I went to the library, the store, hit a thrift store, you know, talked to some old ladies. We were trying on jackets and asking each other if we liked how they looked on each other. And I was like making sure I was like, you tell me the truth, right? Like, tell me if it doesn't look good. And it was just so authentic.
I love that. And I agree, like we should absolutely be taking the time to put those things more into our personal schedules and taking the time to show up for ourselves is that one of the big things that I use when I work with shadow work or with clients is I have them show up for themselves authentically. Most of them, and we talked about this in support group last night too. One of the big things is that often we become isolated, and we've been isolated as a society for several years now because of all of the different things that we have gone through. And not only that, but we have been leaning more into electronics and online interactions. And when that takes us out of our authenticity, even if you're a tech person and you enjoy working with tech. I love playing video games. I love being online. Um, I love all of that. And it still is something that takes me out of who I am authentically in like my soul. And when we go out and experience the world, do things that we love, like similarly to that, I love like thrift store shopping. I love going to like used bookstores. I love going out and experiencing all of the people and everything that is around me. And that's how we can show up authentically for ourselves and just connecting in our ideas of community. And that is still a still and who we are and removing that stuck feeling. And I think it's so important that people get back to that.
Yeah, and allowing yourself to be open to interacting. Like finding that center self so that when you do go out, you're not like, you know the different experiences when you're like, just out shopping or grocery shopping and you're like, you don't want to be there, you just want to get your shit done, you're in a mood, you don't want anyone to look at you. Like that's a radically different experience than going in there and um, just making eye contact, smiling, oh, excuse me, and I find that when I show up with an openness to the people around me, um, then like these fun little, it's not just small talk. It's like, little interactions have a an element of exchange, that energetic exchange, even, saying excuse me, but then, laughing about, how we can't find this what we're looking for, I found myself interacting with these old ladies looking through some clearance clothes for the kids, and we couldn't find our sizes for our relative, kids. So we looked for each other, and it just turned into a beautiful moment. It only lasted, a couple minutes, but it left, it was just so wholesome. It left me feeling a little more full, that connection.
I love that a little more full. I say I love that because it's so powerful right now. Like that a little more full of being part of that connection, whether it be community, familial, friends. It is such an important thing. And it kind of like has a little like golden glow around it.
Yeah, I mean, I understand, and I totally can resonate with like small talk in the sense of like obligatory small talk is kind of draining, but you have to start somewhere with a total stranger. And so, like, easy observations like the weather are a way in. But if you do it authentically from yourself, it allows that other person to respond authentically. And immediately after that observation, it can go in so many different directions, you know?
I really like that. 'Cause I'm not a fan of small talk, like especially when it's all you ever do. Um, and we tend to get really comfortable in just sticking with like the very surface level small talk. I
Yeah,
can't tell you how many
there's like a script to it that I just despise, And so I kind of make it a personal game to like immediately like take it off, like take that first like part of the script, um, but then lead from authenticity and then let it be creative in some way, um, just to see where it goes.
Absolutely. You know what's hilarious though is I was playing with my cards and the sassy ones that I like to pull from. One of the cards fell out that said being weird is better than being boring. And um like if that is not perfect when it comes to, cultivating that connection and kind of moving through that small talk, moving beyond it. And it also
Yeah.
says on the back to go to the grocery store and buy just one grape. Put it on the conveyor belt, let the checker wait and ring you up, ask for the receipts, and don't, under any circumstances, explain yourself to anyone. Take that grape, thank it for teaching you how to do things that others don't understand for whatever good reason you have. And I kind of love that. I mean, if that's not a conversation starter, I don't know what is. I'm kind of
Right.
I absolutely love that also. Sorry, I am trying to check for comments because the restream is not showing up the way that I need it to, so give me a moment, friends.
no worries. We will just continue to have our not small talk.
Yes.
But yeah, I just recently put a Facebook post up, and decided to start using social media to actually be social because I kind of got stuck in this complacent idea of connecting with others. And I'm going to start doing that every month, is just putting up a post and like, hey, if you want to reconnect, comment below, let me know when works for you. And we'll schedule a time to either video chat or meet up in person, depending on if you're local. Because connection's always been something that I'm very passionate about. And being able to connect and feel connected is really important for me. So creating that intentionally without, using social media as a crutch to give myself this false sense of connection where I'm just randomly liking a person's post or just scrolling past it, but just making note, but not actually saying anything. And sometimes commenting, right? But it's just very surface level. So I decided to be more intentional this year and create a stay in touch list that I will go through every month and do the stay in touch post so that I can really start to cultivate that.
Like that. I have another friend who actively schedules in like into her calendar. She's very much like you, Ashley, where she like has a calendar reminder to call people and to schedule out once a month calls. Um, just to in order to stay on top of it. I'm more flow, and so my biggest like thing is like leaning on that intuition hit. Like if somebody's really been on my mind, um, just doing it, just making the phone call. And even if like, it's easy to get in your head and be like, oh, well, they might be busy, they might be working, I should text first and then wait for a response to make sure, they're ready. But often when you're thinking of somebody, it is perfect time.
Yes. Yes. I saw your post about that, Ashley, and I thought that that was fantastic. And it's made me realize that I really do need to like cultivate community here where I am. And Eric and I have talked about this. There's like several pagan groups that are around that we're going to look into. But I also had something really interesting happen, and a couple of years ago, while I was still running the Elder Grove, we held a retreat for Beltane, and we took everybody to a cabin in Gatlinburg and we spent the weekend there in just nice spiritual filled community where we all shared space. We explored communication and connection. We held ritual. It was some really beautiful stuff. And we had some people show up that we had never met before because we kind of put the feelers out everywhere. And so long as a person kind of like paid their own way, they were welcome to come and join the retreat. And we had a few people do that. And one of them reached out to me and she was like, I miss this and you and this community so much. And we hadn't even thought about it. There's been so much going on, and we're so online, like everybody has been saying in this. And I was like, I looked at Eric and I was like, oh my gosh, these people loved this. I didn't even think about it for years. We should do this again. I'm not really in a place where we can just jump back into having the Grove, but if we just did like a once a year retreat where people could meet us in the mountains and we spend a whole weekend there, let's do it. And so now we're opening that back up and inviting people to come and spend 3 or 4 days with us with no technology, no phones, just good community conversation and sharing energy and space together.
I love that.
Oh, I love how that's come all like almost like not full circle, but like how we talk about things being spirals. It's a new
Mhm.
time and place, but you're revisiting this element.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and it was about that stuckness and that stillness because I personally have been in a place of stuckness for a good long while, in different avenues, and I keep coming out of it and coming back into it. mostly because of like life changes. Sometimes those trigger and instigate it. And now that I'm in a place where like stillness is becoming a constant, all of that is able to flow back in, kind of like that conduit channel that I was talking about also, and how we talked about, being stuck, we close ourselves off, we're in that defensive position. It's been really, really interesting, but it's also made me realize that I can still be in that stillness and find more community here.
Absolutely. I think one of my biggest focal points is, looking at, and I mentioned my word of the year is freedom, right? And freedom of choice. And putting myself back into choice. But along with that means, creating intentional choices. So, really being mindful of what it is that I want to create into my world and giving myself a plan to get there, giving myself a system to put into place so that I can start making those choices that cultivate that. So, like connection and community, right? Um, I need it. I will get so sucked into the flow that like I always think about people at the worst moments possible, like 11 o'clock at night. I am not calling you unless you are like super tight with me. We don't have that kind of relationship where I'm going to call you at 11:30 and think it's acceptable.
Right.
you know, you're not in that level of intimacy threshold. My middle sister, I would definitely call her at 11:30, but it better be important, you know.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
So I started like if I'm thinking of someone and it's late or I'm getting ready for bed and I don't want to engage in a conversation, I started scheduling my text messages. So I'll type it out and then I'll press and hold the send button on my Google Messages and you can actually schedule it to send at a different time. And that has been so handy because then my brain lets it go and I'm not gonna like sit there and oscillate and think about it over and over and over again. And I don't forget about it and get distracted later on.
I love that. I love the scheduling function on all technology. Not only because it is like that convenient and that freeing, but that freedom does equate to more space to show up in that authenticity that we talk about so much and to
Mhm.
really make those connections because you can still have that media presence, you can still have that online I almost said textual, but that really is what it is, that textual connection and relationship with people, and still take yourself out of it and be a human being.
Absolutely.
I feel
Yeah.
like that also ties in so much of how people for ages, and it doesn't happen as much lately, but that also ties into how people feel like we're like in the Matrix, is because we really truly have developed this stuckness behind our technology.
Yeah, I think it's still new. We're still trying to find that balance and figure out how to use it in a way that complements our life. Um, and again, going back to my theory of extremes and human nature, I feel like we get lost in it so that it becomes um our reality and then we're going to pull back and kind of figure out how to do less technology, right? So it's only the bare minimum. And then you're like, okay, this isn't working. And you're going to bounce back and immerse yourself more. And eventually you'll find that middle space and that happy medium that allows you to use technology in a way that is beneficial and adds to your life instead of taking it over.
And there's also, kind of this comfort. And I know for a lot of people, like working from home, and it's just so convenient, you can eat your own snacks and whatnot. But then at the same time, you look at your wardrobe, or, people that love fashion are like, what happened to fashion and the clothes? Like you think of different eras of clothing, it's very like every decade had its like signature, aesthetic. And now we're all in athleisure, sweatpants, leggings, and comfortable clothes. Um, Sometimes it's like dressing up for the sake of it and leaving the house, you know, and maybe, just reevaluating. I know it's kind of a spectrum for everybody, but like, maybe it is worth going to the office a couple days a week just to get out, put on some clothes, and feel these other aspects of self. Um, and you have to decide for yourself like how much of that you want or need. And sometimes it takes just like doing it. And we've talked a lot about like sh being uncomfortable in this new version of self that you're wanting to step into. And sometimes like even the clothing, at first it's like it's not comfortable, quote, because it's like it's not my sweats, it's not my jammies, but then what do maybe you're getting a little something out of it.
Okay, so listening to you, my policy is now stop waiting for a special occasion and wear the dress.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And the
So if y'all
jewelry.
see me, yeah, if y'all see me in HEB and I'm wearing like a formal dress, y'all just mind your business, okay?
Go wear it.
Or come talk to me, ask me a question, you know? I'm gonna be the weird person buying one grape at the grocery store.
I'm here for this. And I had a similar revelation probably about a month ago, and it wasn't exactly about leaving the house and putting on like specific clothes, but we had talked so much about authenticity that I was realizing that in my own life I have very much made my appearance much smaller than I want it to be. Like I'm like a spooky ghouly person and I prefer life that way more than I prefer it any other fashion. And I often find myself changing the way that I show up in my appearance to be more palatable for people, which is not something I've ever really wanted to do. So I've been looking for different things to wear and to show up more authentically in what makes me feel comfortable. And in that, I'm also kind of like fighting, well, okay, do I only wear this at home or do I wear it out? And I realized like as I left the house, I was like, I don't give a shit what people think about how I look when I go out. I think that this is liberating and wonderful. But also I also wanted to touch on the how being so isolated and the work from home thing actually affects our relationships and like depression and anxiety. I know this person recently moved, well, over the last like 4 years, moved to a totally different place with not really anybody that they knew. And no, I'm not talking about me. um, and and this person got a job, a really, really good paying job in this place. And he has since like totally isolated himself and he was relying on a familial connection that he had to kind of like be the only person for him to show up with and connect with, like total reliance on that. And then his job gave him the option to work from home 100% of the time. And now he's not leaving his house really at all. And but we are constantly in conversation of, well, why can't I find a long-lasting relationship? Why can't
Mm,
I find meaningful friendships and connections? And part of
mm.
it's because he's not going out to make the connections.
Yep.
And the other part of it is because he's also found himself solely at the mercy of the internet, which means that he is like feeding into all kinds of stuff that nobody really has like an interest in. That sounds really bad, but it's
It's too
it's like,
niche for,
he
yeah, the
yes, like
community.
he
Yeah.
comes out publicly and talks to people and people are just like, okay.
Well, they just don't have the common ground. They don't know where to strike the common,
Yeah.
interest. Yeah. Yep. And I mean, there's spells and stages. I know for me, after having big transition with home, last year it felt really good to have this house and be stable and just want to be in my home. It just felt so good to my body. But now I'm recognizing that the um stuck versus restlessness, right? And so, I've said many times, like, I need to get back into my yoga, and I know that I do better in a group. I don't really do that great at home by myself in front of the YouTube. It doesn't give me that same um experience, right? So as much as I know I want to, and I know I enjoy getting out and doing yoga, getting that routine set. So I saw an offhand, it was online, an offhand like, hey, we're doing this sound bowl vinyasa on Saturday, and it's tomorrow. And I signed up for it just to like jump start and get back out, because I know once I get out there and I meet these people and they do it every week, they meet every week, they know each other, and having that invitation, well, you should join us, or here's our schedule, like we'll be there, and having at least one face, maybe, if not two, that I can like look forward to seeing again. Whether or not that relationship develops into deep, meaningful, it's still a connection.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and there's different levels of connection. And I think it was us that talked about this. There are people who you're supposed to have that big deep connection with. Yeah, and we did talk about this, I think, on another roundtable, because we were talking about how even those one and done co-
Yes.
Mm,
connections are still just as important as the long, meaningful ones.
yeah.
Yes. Yep. And sometimes you got to go through a few like misses, like that didn't really quite land. Like in the case of your friend, getting out there, sometimes it doesn't land, but that doesn't mean just give up and go home. If the desire is to find deep, meaningful relationships, um, you kind of have to keep putting yourself out there and be able to have that still grounded space inside of you, knowing who you are and what you want, to allow those misses to just kind of roll off your back, not do a big old deep what's wrong with me reflection, just it was a miss, and then keep going.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And I'm also reminded in this is the same topic but also a little off topic. I'm just so pushed and guided to say this. Um we have learned to find comfort in our screen from anxiety, depression, from that disconnection in and of itself. This is one of the reasons why in magical and witchy circles we tell people all the time, and people have begun to hate this, go outside and touch grass.
Mm,
And when we take away the idea that we need to disassociate into our technology and instead we go dissociate into a tree, our experience is much different. And we don't come back to this place where we feel waterlogged, or a better term for that would be technology logged. And
mhm.
we've lost a whole portion of our lives in being disconnected, when in order to release that depression and anxiety, we don't need to feel disconnected. We need to feel connected. We need to feel loved, a part of something, like our conduit has been turned on, our puzzle piece moved in, and outside, the grass, the trees, the people, that's what does that. Not this weird piece of technology in your hands, friends.
Well, and that leads me right to the experiment with rats and cocaine and addiction. The
Okay.
rats that didn't have connection with other rats, like there was two water bottles, one was laced, one was clean. Um, the rats that were disconnected, they'd always go to the laced water bottle. But then in the other experiment with the rats that had community, they might. go do a little recreation, but for the most part they didn't, because they had connection, and all like all living things, that's really kind of the basic point of this grand whatever this is, life. It's about connection.
Yes, it absolutely is. Absolutely. I I think that one, I've just come to
And I
like
think,
revelation
yeah,
in
I was going
everything.
to say like an argument for stillness then would be reconnection with self. It still is connection.
Yes.
I'm just going to throw this out there. Belonging starts with yourself.
Say it again, please.
Belonging starts with yourself. You
Yes.
can still feel isolated in a crowded room full of people. In order to feel belonging, you have to first accept yourself and allow yourself to belong to yourself.
Mm.
And yeah, and this screen takes you out of that. It takes you out of everything. I'm so I know I've kind of like gone on like a technology beat, but I think that like
I think
I
this
think
is
that
where it needed to go though, right now, in the whole energy of
I
everything.
agree. Absolutely. You know, I think that it has contributed to so many of the problems, so many of the issues. And more and more every day, I see more communities popping up. And at the same time, I'm seeing more people saying that they don't have community. And they're in that place of stuck. They're in that place of guarded defensiveness. They're in that presence of I need to protect myself and my spirit. I need to protect all of these things when really we need to like let the security blanket go. We need to drop it on the ground while we're walking through the train station, get on a train and go somewhere totally different, friends.
Yeah, and then go sit in that space and observe and feel yourself and connect. Yes.
Safe space starts with you, man.
Yes, absolutely. Well, friends, we are coming up on our hour. If there is one overarching thing that you want people to take away from this episode, what would it be, friends?
Oh, wow. I really like this just last 5 minutes, and I just want to like put a emphasis around the last 5 minutes of conversation that we had.
I think that that was like I know I kind of like went a little off rails, but I swear like that was like some channeled-ish,
That
friend.
was channeled shit right there, yeah.
Okay, I got the tie in.
Okay.
All right. So we talked about in stillness is when you can explore your why so that you can make sure that you're planting the right seeds. So when it comes to cultivating those powerful connections and meaningful connections, take a moment of stillness to figure out where you're going, what you were running from, and where you want to go. And make sure that you select the right seed to nurture and tend as you move forward.
I think that hits the nail on every single head.
And I would like to also just remind everyone we have passed the point of the darkest time of the year. The days are getting longer, so it's interesting that seeds are mentioned today because yeah, it's that wheel for us in the northern hemisphere.
Yep. Yep. And we are out of it. Like we made it, you know, we can start looking forward to spring. We can feel its beck and call. I've had so many people say, "Hey, we're hitting a heat wave, but we're still not out of winter yet." And I'm just like, I want to do the whole TikTok thing and just smack them on the head and be like, "No, you stop it. Spring is on the way. Stop it."
Oh,
But I think that this is uh a great place for us to leave off and reconvene for next week. I thank you both so much for sitting down and talking with me about this, for getting this message out to other people. And hopefully, this will open up some of those security blankets and get people a different chance to really reconnect with themselves and go out and, understand the difference between their stuck and their still. And thank you everybody for listening to us and for those who will listen to this episode as it gets put onto Spotify. We will be back with Tarot Tuesdays on Tuesday. And then we'll be back with more Trauma Talk and Roundtable next Friday. I do have a workshop tomorrow. It's a 2-hour workshop. If you can't come to it live, there is a recording of it that you'll receive. You can sign up at my website that I'll put into the comments. And I know Ashley has some upcoming workshops too, if you want to plug those in.
Oh, absolutely. So I finally got the enrollment page ready. So I'll send you the link after this. But we're doing an inner inventory workshop February 2nd, starting at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. So if this has really hit home and resonated, you don't know where to start, this is the space where you find stillness. This is a space where you get to pause and reflect and figure out where you are and where you want to go. And then the 22nd is when I will be holding the first foundations workshop where we start to really build from that and start to really reconnect with self and figure out what we need in order to create that safe space and that sense of belonging. And, just figure out who we are now that we've stopped sprinting through the forest.
Yes, yes. I love that. I'm here for it and I cannot wait. And again, thank you all for joining me and for sharing all of your insights. And I will see you next week, friends.